nostalgia critic. I remember it so you don't have to. Well, seeing how we are still in the month of love, I figure it's time to ask a cinematic question about love that seems to be plaguing a lot of people's minds. Is Twilight the worst thing ever? The books, the movies, the all-around phenomenon, nothing generates more brainless love or cynical hate than Twilight. But is it really worthy of as much cinematic disgust as it gets? Of course it is! It's the worst cinematic burden no one should ever have to! What I'm getting at is, people seem to regard this franchise about a drama-addicted twit torn between an emo-tastic vampire and an ice tray stomach werewolf as one of the worst in entertainment history, both cinematic and literary. And given the lineup of bad movies we've gotten over the years, is Twilight, for lack of a better term, deserving of that title? Well, let's get down to what people really hate about it. It messes with the classic lore, most famously, vampires don't sparkle. People have made up their own rules about vampires before, but this one seems to be the most not vampire. There's also plenty of plot holes and established story elements that never seem to truly add up, even within the silly additions they make to the Supernatural rulebook. And while these additions are phenomenally stupid, I've seen Garbage Pail Kids, so what else you got? The effects are terrible. Again, Garbage Pail Kids next. It's nothing but female-oriented smut. Well, you're close. It sparked the authors of female-oriented smut, but these two don't even hit the bed sheets until part 4, part 1. And to its credit, I do think the bed gave the best performance. It did not look happy to be a flat surface for flat characters. This was actually a suicide, not too many people know that. But I digress. The story is focused, albeit poorly, on the emotions of the characters. You know, when they actually decide to show emotion. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's horrible at it, but that doesn't make it smut until part 4. And even then, the rewards of such an act are not rewardy. So that leaves us with one last major aspect that people seem to hate the most. The characters and their complete fucked up ethics. The fact that these people are some of the stupidest and most selfish creations that any financially successful series has ever produced. And yeah, they are. First you got Edward, who has been around for more than 100 years and yet still managed to not grow a personality. Which figures because he falls in love with another personality-stricken bland job, but we'll get to her in a bit. They share little to no chemistry, yet he constantly wants to throw himself at her feet. So much so that even dollar store romance novels are telling him to grow a pair. He also likes to break up with her, yell at her, get in contrived cockfights, calls a literal miracle of birth an evil abomination. But that's okay because women like a bad bat? Jacob is the other idiot who seems to have the hots for Bella. He seems to be a little smarter than Edward, and even supportive of those he cares about. But he is still attracted to Bella, which is why I use the term little smarter than Edward. His big controversy outside of being allergic to shirts is he imprints on a newborn baby, which in Twilight Land means he has marked her to be his future mate, making him a pedo-wolf? I guess this part never bothered me too much because nobody fully knows how imprinting works because they just made the shit up. I always thought he was just doing it to protect Bella's kids so the other wolves wouldn't kill her. Or even some made-up wolf bullshit sense could see the future and see that they would one day be a couple. I don't know, they made it up and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so how am I supposed to get angry with it if I don't even understand it? That said, it is pretty weird to watch a kid grow and I guess be thinking, yeah, I'm gonna bang that someday? But then again, vampires in lore are usually hundreds of years old and have most likely watched their future loved ones grow up, so I don't know if anything in this setup is really that new. I don't know, I just find it hard to believe that Stephenie Meyer, as batshit crazy as a writer she is, would be able to work in a pedophile wolf. It just doesn't seem likely. Whatever the reasoning is and whatever imprinting is, I'm sure it's stupid. And probably not the main reason to hate the movies. But then we got the queen of mouth-breathing herself, Bella. Bella is where many have the most ethical problems, and they should. She's awful. She never fights for herself, is overly dependent, is constantly throwing herself into peril just so her Plague Girl calendars can save her. Even at her goddamn wedding, she barely cracks a smile. Look at that! Oh, I'm getting married. Sucks. So why does Bella come across as so awful, and more importantly, why do so many younger girls want to follow her? Because in reality, Bella is and has always been one thing, a blank slate. Meyer, whether she realizes it or not, is tapping into a lot of girls and even women's fantasies, which is to have all their troubles taken away by a handsome male and yet still be troubled so that the male can continue to look after her. That's why she's so dependent, and that's why she never does anything. Because she's just a skin for female readers to put on and enter into a fantasy world of love and excitement. That's why superheroes for a long time were so bland and boring. If they had distinct personalities that were different from your own, you couldn't fantasize about being them. Now, many would argue that times have changed, and characters in pop culture have evolved to distinct personas and identities, even in genres that were considered less important several years earlier. And that's probably the biggest reason people hate Twilight, because a character nowadays being too much of a blank slate, not doing anything, now equals uncaring, selfish, lazy, too dependent on everyone, and avoiding responsibility when trouble is afoot. And seeing how the biggest audience for this series is girls and younger women, many would say this is the worst role model that could ever be devised for an evolving world. And on the one hand, yeah, that sounds exactly right. She is the worst role model for anyone. Just a miserable, uninteresting little pain-in-the-ass burden, which the story is building up as the everyday hero. Yeah, lick it. But here's my thought on the character destroying the fabric of strength and morality. Think of all the things you grew up with, whether it be superheroes, fantasy, comedy, romance. Most of these things were not the best influences either. Many of them relied on violence, or resolutions that couldn't really happen in real life. Saved by the Bell, for example, is about a high school boy who constantly causes trouble and yet still comes out cool and on top. And let's face it, at some point when we were growing up, we wanted to be like Zach Morris. But when we got to high school, it wasn't everything the show promised, was it? But it's okay. You know why? We adapted. We all wanted to be violent superheroes or glamorous movie stars, but we quickly discovered that reality had different plans, and we woke up pretty quick to it. Why? 1, we're adaptable. We learn and discover that our environment changes, and thus we have to make some changes too. 2, we grow the fuck up. It's called being smart, and young people do it more often than you think. Not all the time. But remember when The Simpsons was said to be destroying the fabric of America? Remember how Andrew Dice Clay was the most shocking person in media? Remember how everybody thought Madonna was gonna be the downfall of society? A lot of things we thought were going to kill us, we actually just evolved beyond. And now we look back and laugh at half the stuff we were afraid of. The early Simpsons aren't shocking. Hell, if anything, they're just kind of awkward. Nobody talks about Andrew Dice fucking Clay anymore. In fact, where the hell even is that guy? And Madonna, well, okay, she still has to keep her clothes on, but for different reasons. My guess is we'll look back on Twilight as the same way. It was stupid, even enjoyably stupid, and at times, it probably did go too far. Watch this old vlog if you want more specifics on that. But for every moron who's actually going to stay in the mindset that Twilight represents what life really is, dozens of others are evolving and moving on. So is Twilight the worst thing ever? Well, the fact is, it's not Twilight that we hate so much. It's everybody's reaction to it. The fact that society made it a hit, and we wonder what that says about us. It's weird and it's messed up, but it's not the first time we've liked unethical crap. So it only proves that we shouldn't be paranoid about it either. Just accept the fact that chances are people will look back on it one day and laugh the same way we laugh at something like Saved by the Bell. It's stupid, and I'll continue to make fun of it. But in terms of the worst thing ever? Oh, my friends, there is so much more evolution in de-evolution that I think our society has to show. I'm the Nostalgia Critic. I remember it so you don't have to.